Welcome to NovoEdTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the NovoEdTalks podcast, a place for training trailblazers to get real. I'm Lynn Christensen-Esker of NovoEd, and today I'm joined by Jim Everidge, Market Director of Enterprise Platforms at TiER1 Performance. TiER1 provides strategy activation through people and enables leaders to create better workplaces and build healthy, high-performance teams. With 40 years of experience in the learning and technology space, Jim's entrepreneurial MBA degree has served him well in helping him create shareholder value for hundreds of his clients. Jim was previously president and CEO of Rapid Learning Deployment, LLC, and when he sold Rapid LD in recent years, Jim transitioned to serve as market director. Jim, welcome to NovoEdTalks.
Lynn, thank you. Glad to be here.
Excited to talk to you today. Let's start off with a little bit about your background and what you do there at TiER1 Performance, and maybe talk a little bit about TiER1's philosophy on strategy, because I find that really interesting.
You bet. So I'm market director of enterprise platforms. TiER1 uses the term market as how customers get engaged with our company for the first time. So if we're helping a customer with a learning and talent platform issue, then they become part of the market of enterprise platforms. Also serve on an advisory board for Symphony AI, an AI company that TiER1 has invested in. So I've got a really strong background in technology. I will say that, I'm not focused on technology for technology's sake. I am more about how technology can be levered into the business. So if you kind of had to say what has been my secret sauce over the years in helping customers, it's really that. It's really helping them create that connection between the technology that's being used and what they're trying to do from a business standpoint. A couple other things about my background. When I first got out of college, I was a molecular biologist. Also was a paramedic for 10 years, and I've been a GA pilot for 20 years. And with all three of those, there's a lot of detail and a high degree of mastery that's required. And so it just kind of gives you a little insight into who I am as a person. When you think about TiER1, they're kind of focused on the same thing. How do we help people become their best person to execute the strategy that organizations are faced with? And so, that's the whole thing about TiER1 is that we are focused on the people side of strategy and how we make them their best so that they can help execute on it.
I really love that. And that's really what it's all about, right? The people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of your customers' biggest challenges in L&D?
Yeah, in the technology space that I'm in, so in the learning and talent platforms business, one of the things that we see customers struggling with is just the wide variety of technologies that are available. And so altogether, those things form an ecosystem, a learning and talent ecosystem in an organization, and really just trying to understand how all those pieces fit together, which ones are absolutely needed, which ones are maybe not needed. One of the things that we do to help clients there is to do an ecosystem inventory. And we literally just go across the organization and we count systems, understand what they're there for, who bought them, what their license period is, that kind of thing. So we can really rationalize how they might be used. I think the second thing that we've done is to help clients take that inventory and figure out where there's overlap or duplication, And then lastly, we then take that information and see what we can do to compress the ecosystem down to a smaller number. We have a large global client that we did an inventory for that had 86 different systems that they were using in learning and talent by itself. And we believe that we could probably quickly get rid of 30 or so, 35 systems down to about 50. And over the long term, we felt like we could maybe even consolidate down to 20 systems. And so when you think about the opportunity for cost savings and simplicity, ease of use, building capability in the organization, you get all that if you can take a system of 86 platforms and reduce it down to 20. Another area that we're really spending a lot of time focusing on is helping customers embrace AI technology, and not in general, but specifically the AI technologies that are being brought to market by the vendors in their ecosystem. So NovoEd, as an example, has an array of AI technologies that have already been put into the product, and they've got more to come. They've got a roadmap of more technology they're bringing. The challenge for customers is how do they embrace that? One example of a technology that's had a fair amount of impact already is in the learning management system space. The more metadata that you have about courses, the richer your reporting about those courses can become. But setting that up may take 15, 20, or 30 minutes. And if they do 1,000 new courses a year, it's a lot of time. Yeah. And so where AI then comes in is the ability to create that metadata content and for the administrator. So you take a 15 to 30 minute job and you drop it to 1 or 2 minutes because they now have an assistant that's filling in the metadata for them. That's pretty powerful. And so we see that a lot. And there's a lot of those examples. And I think the challenge for learning organizations is really just embracing what those are, figuring out which ones they're going to use, which ones they don't want to use. And not only is it for the learning and development teams, but that technology extends down to the customer, the user of the systems. NovoEd, as an example, has a translation capability, a real-time translation. So you might have a team of people, a cohort that start together that they're not all English-speaking, native English speakers. Yet the system will translate their inputs into their native language and translate the other team inputs into their native language so they can have that collaboration on a real-time basis. The question is, are your audiences ready for that? So there are some challenges in embracing that. But those are the things that we're designing kind of processes and procedures that help clients figure out whether those are good or not.
That's so valuable. In a lot of these conversations that I have, people know it's out there, know they need to embrace it. But sometimes it's really difficult to know where to start and how to use it appropriately, right?
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned the one organization where you had, 82 or 87 different pieces of technology. I'm sure you have all kinds of stories about that, and also about, how TiER1 Performance has helped organizations beyond the technology. Do you have any successful case studies that you can maybe share with us?
You bet. In fact, that same client, they are in the transportation business. And they do a lot of compliance-like training to improve safety. So safety is their focus. It's a requirement for the job. Most of the people that consume that content are frontline employees, and they have over 50,000 of them, specifically in this operations group that we deploy this platform for. So they were trying to figure out how do they really bring a different view of the training content that was required, the compliance content, if you will. In the old LMS, it was a list of courses. They click on a course, they take 20 minutes of a bunch of screens of content, and then check they're done with that one. And then they have another 4 or 5 that they have to do. Not very engaging, not something that they even felt like the employees were taking away a lot of. They also did even in person at all their different operations facilities all over the globe. And the challenge was with that is that there's no consistency. Every organization, every location did their own thing. And so the results were all over the board. So they implemented a platform. They went from this decentralized approach to a centralized approach. They developed about 45 to 60 minutes worth of content. And we develop a new group of content offerings every quarter. And we have been doing that for almost 3 years. So we've got 11 quarters worth of data and information. And what we're finding is that people really value the new approach. There's 3 or 4 topics. They dig deep into the topic. They collaborate with their manager, with their peers. And you got to remember, these are frontline employees. They don't use computers in their job. And so there was a whole marketing campaign around how do we give access to technology and when it was appropriate to use it. But what we found is that 93% of this audience, think about what I just said, 93% of over 50,000 frontline people said these were applicable to their job, and that 78% said they were more successful in their job because they, took these programs. So, and that's data that spans a long time, almost 3 years. And so you realize the value proposition there of getting the frontline people engaged in the topics that are important to the company today. Great success story.
That's amazing. And that kind of dovetails into what I was going to ask you. You may have already just answered it, but the buzz around skills has been big in the last few years in L&D. So what's driving that? Do you think it's that decentralized, centralized kind of model, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think it's a little of that, but there also is this need to be agile. And you really need to be able to give people the training against the skills that are important for their job right now. And that's what, and it's different amongst people. So even if you have a team of 10 or 12 people that are doing work, the skills that each one of them needs are different. And so, how do you actually do that? And so when you break down these jobs into skills, then you can assess each one of those and then develop pinpoint training for the specific gap that a person has. So that's super important. I think that agility is really what's driving most of this. I will say that once you then make that assessment of those skills, it's a lot easier for you then to begin to connect those skills to business strategy. And that has become more important too, is, learning has become more central and more strategic to the organization, making sure that there's good alignment between, what you're developing people against and what the company needs from a business standpoint is real important. TiER1 has a great approach about measurement and evaluation, where we measure to align, not to punish. And so it's really more from a positive perspective. What gaps do you have? How can I help fill those gaps so that you can become the best employee that you can become? Back to that basic tenet of how TiER1 operates. I would also tell you that technology has really evolved and enabled us to do skill evaluation on a systematic basis at scale. It used to not be that way. It's funny, we talk about skill projects to customers, and there's a few old timers that look like they have PTSD around that. And because those projects were hard and grueling, but things have changed. And so technology has really given us a leg up and given us that opportunity to measure this on an enterprise scale.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that is true. Between technology and agility, what else are you seeing as being the future of L&D? Like what is going to be necessary for people to know and do in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think when I look at the L&D team specifically, there's a lot of things that are changing about the skills that are required of them. And so when you think about the future, they've got to get a really deep technology proficiency. They've got to think about upskilling and reskilling themselves. We talk about doing that at the organization level, but L&D teams need to be thinking about how do they do that? How are they going to be in a position to embrace new technology, skill themselves differently so that they continue to provide value to the organization? And they're going to, in many cases, they're going to have to pursue those paths on an individual self-directed basis. And so it's not like I'm going to go to a course offering, maybe something offered by a local university with a group of people, I'm really going to have to figure out what's important to me. And so, that whole concept of self-directed learning will come back to the L&D team itself. And then a little bit more broadly for the L&D team, they need to be able to be in a position to have really solid leadership skills. They need to be thinking strategically about what's coming in 6, 12, and 18 months. They need to communicate better. Many of our larger customers have L&D teams that are either, they may be centralized, but they're focused out to the business units. So they have a little bit of myopia. They're only focused on that one unit, or the L&D teams are actually out in the business units, and the centralized group kind of coordinates and fosters collaboration among them. Doing that at a higher level is going to be really important, because we don't have time to have duplication of effort. So if you have team A, B, and C all investigating the same things, implementing the same technologies, licensing the same tools, not even knowing that the other ones are doing it, back to that whole ecosystem analysis thing. I think it's really important that the L&D teams of tomorrow focus on how do they bring their groups together and collaborate at a higher level. Also say that we can't ignore generative AI. That's going to be an important part of our future. And I think, the very first thing is how we might embed conversational AI. I yesterday had an opportunity to look at a demo from NVIDIA. We're all familiar, the largest corporation in the world now by enterprise value. And they've released a collaborative AI, conversational AI agent called James. And you talk to James. Now, from a content standpoint, you can only ask him questions about NVIDIA. So what other products, their marketing strategy, pricing, how they work. He'll give you very elegant answers, but it's like talking to a person. I mean, literally, it's no different than you and I have a conversation here, and I'm interviewing this person that is a bot. It's a conversational bot. So that's what we're going to be faced with in a very near term. And how do we leverage that? How do we leverage that for our own benefit? How do we leverage that for the organization's benefit? We've also had this concept of in the flow of work, learning in the flow of work. I think Josh Bersin probably coined the term lit flow, learning in the flow of work. And we now can do that. And one of the obvious things is, Microsoft has embedded their AI agent inside their productivity tools. So Microsoft 365, and you're able to just literally at a drop of a mouse be able to pull up Microsoft Copilot. I've got it right here in my browser, and I can, summarize content in a Word document. I can analyze big sets of data in an Excel spreadsheet. I can create a really visual, compelling design in a PowerPoint deck I'm working on, and all of that's AI based. And so we literally have these tools at our fingertips. How do we then, again, use those in our L&D practice to move the organization ahead faster? And then lastly, in the generative AI space is this concept of customized learning paths. And, the ability to literally have a very unique learning path for every person in your company at scale. And I'm not talking 10,000, I'm talking 100,000, 300,000, 500,000 people that have a very tailored path. We're very close to that, where we can do that at scale. And so how does that change what we do as a business? How does that change what the L&D professional does? No longer do I build a program that 10,000 people might take, because they might not take it, because we've got so many other sources of content and other things that we can do. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. We really have to start thinking in an innovative way about how we embrace those and bring them to our practice in learning and development. It's going to be an exciting time.
I think so, but it's also a little scary, I think, maybe for some people just getting into L&D. As having that foundational approach has been able to help you adapt. What kind of advice would you give to people just getting into the industry?
Yeah, it's I have that opportunity actually a lot at TiER1. You let slip at the very beginning that I've been in this for 40 years. I was like, oh no, that's a long time. But the value propositions, I've seen a lot, done a lot. The concept of a recession is not new for me. I started with, I think, my first one in 1987, several in the 90s, several in the 2000s, several in the teens. I've been through this before, and just being able to, and I've been in the learning and development space for most of that time, and so being able to lever what I've learned, what I've seen, but still apply kind of a new vision to it. So I've got a lot of lessons learned, and so I'm in that position where I have that opportunity to coach people through that. And a couple of things that I've brought up recently. One is I encourage people to get involved, and there's so much opportunity in bringing people together. You being part of that process, benchmarking with them, figuring out what they've done, done that has worked, and what they've done that hasn't worked, and shortcutting your own steps to that same opportunity. And you only get that if you get involved. If you are heads down every day at work, just doing the thing for your company, you can create value there, but you can create more value if you can bring in the experiences of peer companies in your market, that kind of thing. I've also recommended to people to use technology. That's super important because they're going to be leveraging technology to the customers of L&D. They got to be proficient themselves, and the only way to become proficient is to use it. And so it's interesting how many people that I know that are in their 50s that don't use AI on a daily basis, and that are in L&D, and they're really shorting themselves an opportunity to make themselves more effective, create more value, but also figure out how they're going to use this technology going forward. And then lastly, this is a little counterintuitive, but I've often advised people to support their advocates. And what I mean by that is that there are going to be people in organizations that support, believe in learning and development, and they're the first to raise their hands whenever you have a new initiative. So I'm a Jim Collins, good to great kind of advocate. Find a really good person and build around them. And same thing inside the organization. Find people that support L&D and build around them. Test all your new ideas on them. Have them implement programs first. But you have to identify who those people are and what their limits of advocacy are going to be, and then leverage them, because they will consistently support you and help you maybe move a little bit faster than if you find people that are maybe not supportive of the things that you're doing at first, because they don't understand them and how they apply. These advocates do intuitively. So those are the three things I typically would say.
Fantastic advice. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Jim.
You bet.
Yeah, your perspectives have been amazing, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. And thanks to everyone for joining us for this episode. See you next time on the NovoEdTalks podcast.